is Hussain, and I'm essentially a poet, screenwriter, lyricist. Uh, I'm going to speak about the vocabulary of anti-Muslim hate speeches in India. And it's a long story how I drilled down the rabbit hole of the Hindutva content. I had faced a lot of attack in 2020, and I decided to find out, like one of those action thrillers in the US. I decided to find out who ruined me. And that is how I drilled down the rabbit hole of the Hindutva social media content in India. And I thought that being a writer and having certain amount of perhaps self-trained understanding in language, I thought I'll probably speak about the vocabulary that is the anti-Muslim hate speeches in India. Ironical as it is, speaking in the US, uh, India is, I think, the global epicenter of hate speeches, especially anti-Muslim hate content in India. India Hate Lab, headed by a journalist, Rakib Hamid Nayak, had published a report sometime in 2023 that there were 668 anti-Muslim hate speeches in India. In the year 2023, that means almost two hate speeches across India uh, every day. This number also does not, this India Hate Lab is not run by hundreds of journalists who are accumulating data. This is only a small team that is covering small amount of regions uh, in a self-funded, in a very private way. So this number could easily be a lesser number than what the actual number of hate speeches could be. The second reason why I call it the global epicenter is because out of a survey done by TRT, 85% of all anti-Muslim posts originated in India, US, and UK. Like I said, ironical as it is to speak in the US about anti-Muslim sentiment, India again takes the cake over here with the maximum number of posts. These two numbers are not exactly disparate numbers. They're very correlated because what happens is that, of course, there's already a prevailing amount of prejudice and bias and negative sentiment against Muslims in the society. What these hate speeches do is that they crystallize and create a vocabulary which is a combination of the texts of Hindutva ideologues like Savarkar and Golwalkar, and they take some of the sentiments that are popular in the society, they mix them, and they churn it out in a very hateful and almost a call for violence speech as of today. So language, the reason why I also chose language is because it is in a way the vehicle in which individuals communicate in a society, and it is the reflection of a society. It's the reflection of a culture that prevails in any society at given point of time. And it is, I think, important to analyze the words and the vocab and the phrases and the everyday slurs that people speak, uh, especially the certain section of radicalized individuals in the society, which is significantly higher than it used to be a decade earlier. Why also I think this, what is the correlation between such a high number of hate speeches and the anti-Muslim content on online is because this kind of vocabulary was earlier historically disseminated by shakhas, Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh shakhas. Now people had to enroll in those shakhas to kind of get attuned to this kind of vocabulary. Now you do not need to go to a shakha. The shakha will come to your doorsteps. The shakha will come to your mobile phones. The shakha will come through your chat messengers and social media platforms, and it will disseminate the vocabulary that it wants you to speak, or at least wants ingrained in your everyday usage. And yeah, so um, where do they occur? Like these events and these kind of social media abuse, they occur in conferences. These conferences are organized by Hindutva organizations. Vishwa Hindu Parishad is actually responsible for around 200 of the events that were 668 events that I talked about in 2023. Vishwa Hindu Parishad, again, as per that India Hate Lab report, 200 of them are organized by uh, Vishwa Hindu Parishad across India. and 38 of them are very localized by Sakal Hindu Samaj, something that in Maharashtra, something that Parth may speak about in detail later. And one of the biggest conferences that had happened in India that really piqued the interest of everybody across the globe. It became international news. Was a very famous, rather infamous conference, which was called the Dharam Sansad, the Religious Parliament, in December 2021, if I may remember correctly. Uh, this religious parliament, which consisted of religious leaders from across India, uh, Hindu leaders, whatever you may want to, the term you may want to use for them, uh, had congregated into a conference, and the speeches that were given were encouraging ethnic cleansing. The words and the phrases and the vocabulary they were using were the ones uh, calling for genocide. I will speak about it, the kind of things that they had said later when I come down to the words. The second kind of things that happen are rallies. The rallies and protests that had been taken out again by these Hindutva organizations. One of a very big example of these rallies is the one that happened in, I think, August 2021, which was in Jantar Mantar in the heart of the city of the capital of India. And that rally was perhaps the instance where the vocabulary I saw, I mean, I was one of the first people to call it out and on social media. And the reason why I clearly remember why I called it out, and it's going to be something I'm going to talk about later. It's because the vocabulary shifted from indirect to direct. All these years, the vocabulary was Babar Ki Aulaad, which is the sons of Babar, and uh, Mandir Wahi Banayenge. It's an allusion to how a mosque was raised, and we'll make the temple there. But this is where I think the first time the alarm bells were rung. Ki, the slogan that was called was "Jab mulle kaate jayenge, Ram Ram chillayenge." That when the mullahs, which is the slur for Muslims, when they'll be cut into pieces, we are going to shout Ram Ram. That was a direct call of violence. The third area where there's a lot of hate speech. I'm using the word hate speech again and again, but the connotation of hate speech, as per the United Nations, is any kind of speech or written or spoken which has direct attack on anybody profiled racially or religion-wise. So that is exactly what that constitutes. Media has I don't know what to say about media. I have said this often on social media, and I would again, India is perhaps the largest producer of anti-Muslim content in the world. I'm using perhaps just to safeguard my argument, but it is perhaps the largest anti-Muslim content producer in the world. And the every platform available technologically right now, whether it is TV, whether it's YouTube, whether it's newspapers, whether it's social media, which is Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, chat messengers, Telegram, WhatsApp, they are all completely entirely filled with this propaganda and hate speech. Uh, I one cannot really say and point out uh, if it is these mediums that have communicated the vocabulary to people, and then the people have just absorbed it and started spewing it. Because what happens is that language, the nature of language is such that if there are a certain number of people who are disseminating, or rather infusing a kind of vocabulary inside a larger section of population, what happens is that the people who are absorbing it also start responding to it, also start creating their own stuff from the vocabulary that they have, and then they inculcate it in the local lives and the individual perspectives. So it kind of, the language becomes a self-sustaining cycle. This hate language, this language of hate speech and anti-Muslim sentiment creates the language creates a self-sustaining cycle for itself between the society and the people who are crystallizing it for them, and then disseminating it for them. And where this language ends up getting used again is everyday places of interaction, whether it is the resident welfare associations of this country. You can read up many articles where these are there. uh, dis- Clear discrimination against Muslims is done. There are everyday places of work, interaction. The delivery boys, the lower classes suffer the most. The delivery boys, the Uber drivers, the Ola drivers, the the everyday shopkeepers who are visually uh, recognizable as Muslims, they face discrimination. Uh, in offices and workplaces, it happens in a slightly more polished way and in a slightly more polished language in corporate workspaces. And that's a different, I mean, if anybody academic is looking for that, somebody should really get into what kind of discriminations happen and the vocabulary and the things that happen in corporate India. That is still, that's a rabbit hole somebody else will have to dig perhaps. So yeah, these are the places where these hate speeches occur. Now, what are the trends that I've largely observed in the vocabulary, and what is the vocabulary that I'm talking about? I would like to explain that. I think, like I said, historically, what has happened is there's a large shift from indirect to direct. Historically, what has happened is all the references towards Muslims or the references that used to create an anti-Muslim sentiment in Muslims, anti-Muslim sentiment in the society, were indirect in nature. What do I mean by indirect in nature? तेल लगा लो डाबर का, नाम मिटा दो बाबर का. It roughly translates to apply the oil of Dabur and then erase the name of Babar. One can question why one would want to apply the oil of Dabur in the first place, but you can have a very perverted view if you ask a Hindutva person why he says that. He can refer to lubrication as well. Yeah, so these are the kind of inferences that they end up making on social media. So it is Tel Lagalo Dabar ka naam and erase the name of Babar. Babar over here signifies a very indirect allusion to Muslims or descendants of Babar or descendants of an invader who has historically oppressed the Hindu society in India. Then there were references in the 92 ones like Ek Dhakka Aur Do Babri Masjid Tod Do. Now one may say that it is Babri Masjid, but again, now it has come down to Masjid Tod Do, Mazar Tod Do, which is break the mosques, break the mausoleums. I think are mausoleums the right word for mazar? I don't know. So yeah, then another indirect reference was Bharat ka bachcha bachcha Jai Shri Ram bolega, which is used till date. That is an indirect call to say that everybody will have to say this. It's you cannot not say this. And mandir wahi banayenge. What is wahi? We will make the temple there. There is where, that is the site of the Babri Masjid demolition. The exact place where we raised down a mosque is where we would resurrect, uh, in their understanding, we would resurrect a mandir that was historically there. A modern phrase again, which was used in 2020 Delhi riots, was "Desh ke gaddaro ko goli maro saro ko." Who is the gaddar over here? The Muslim, who is often referred to as the Pakistani and the traitor of this country, was the direct call over here. But it is codified. It is still codified. It is still not reference. Uh, this indirect reference in vocabulary is also not devoid of international import. There's a lot of words that have been taken from the post 9/11, after 2001, which has been uh, post 2000 actually, which have been included in the Hindutva vocabulary. Words like Saddam, you can be referred to as Saddam, you can be referred to as the Taliban, you can be referred to as an Al Qaeda jihadi, you can be referred to as Laden. One of my friends, school friends, is still date called Laden, by the way. So you can imagine, he used to be called Laden back in school times, and even now he's jokingly called as Laden even now. The word jihad came into the Indian vocabulary post 9/11. So what has happened with this international import is that Hindutva vocabulary has created a hybrid model of words and phrases, which is inclusive of the vocabulary of the ideologues, which is inclusive of the cultural import, localized cultural import, which we talk about. And it also has international influence, which is post 9/11. This combines in a very ingenious way, it combines the different nature of anti-Muslim sentiment in India with the prevailing Islamophobia globally. And like I said, the shift has been from indirect to direct. मुल्ले काटे जाएंगे, राम राम चिल्लाएंगे. Dharam Sansad, in fact, was an epitome of direct hate calls, direct calls of anti-Muslim speech. Prabodhanand Giri had said that we need to make preparations like in Myanmar. We need to do a Safai Abhiyan, a cleanliness campaign. We need to clean the world of jihadis. These are his words, not mine. I hope YouTube does not report me for speaking out words of somebody else. Uh, Yati Narsinghanand, these are not people now. Prabodhanand Giri, Yati Narsinghanand, these are not people who are, as we often quote, as fringe. I will come to the word fringe later. Uh, these are not leaders which are fringe. They are in touch with the politicians of the country. They are the Mahamandleshwars. They are religious leaders who people follow during yatras, during these are not people of no influence. They are not people of no political connections. They are referred Muslims, an actor, a prominent actor in Bollywood, and over here in Dharam Sansad, Muslims were also referred to as cockroaches, which is, I mean, like clearly a Nazi vocabulary borrow. The women of Hindutva are also not far behind. Sadhvi Annapurna in this conference had said, even if 100 of us get ready for violence technically, then we can kill 20 lakhs of Muslims. That is what she had said. And then she had famously said, which I think is the epitome of Hindutva approach towards women in general. She had said that we need to take swords in one hand and take a balan, which is a rolling pin in one hand, um, to combat the jihadis. So, I mean, those would, a rolling pin is essentially used to roll chapatis in India. So that we need to yield weapons and we need to be adept in handling the kitchen as well is largely what they say. Now, what are the other kind of words? Like I said, they're spoken everywhere among people. Of course, some of them are direct, some of them are indirect, some of them are allusions. They cover all aspects of being a Muslim: religious, economic, cultural. Some of the examples of religious and how they are getting modern in social media as well. Allahu Akbar is generally taken as a jibe, that Allah Akbar bol ke phat to nahi jayega. Are you going to speak Allahu Akbar and explode? This is a phrase I have heard from somebody. Uh, Allahu Akbar is also referred to by trolls across social media, and it is called Ola or Uber. Ola is a taxi app in India. Uber is a taxi app in the US, as you must know. So Allahu Akbar is modified to Ola or Uber. 72 Hoors is again a religious phrase which is used often by social media handles, which is used to mock both men and women. Men that, oh, you're going to die, and are you going to bomb yourself because you want those 72 Hoors in heaven? And women are mocked in the sense that you are not going to be a Hoor anyway because you're not a quote unquote virgin anymore, something like that. In that sense, another religious phrase which is used and often used for many people is halala ki paidaish, which is essentially a pejorative for the word bastard. Uh, these, of course, are meant to hurt the religious sentiments. They are also meant to provoke a religious sentiment response from people who are hearing them, because any Muslim who would be religious would try to counter it from a religious sentiment being hurt point of view. And then yeah, I mean, that's one of the, that it's provocative, it's very hurtful. Then economic, what are the kind of economic words that I used? Pancharwala. Puncture is a common phrase which is often used. It puncture means when a tire gets punctured, the person who repairs the puncture of a tire. There are many puncture in India, many garage and many hardware operating people in India who are Muslims, among the other lower classes as well. Uh, these are some of the professions. Kasai is again something that is very often used as or rather a depiction of a Muslim having a sickle in the hand in many cartoons. Kurish is one of the cartoonists that you should check out if you haven't. Kuril, I think, if the name, extremely violent and extremely vile cartoons. And so that Kasai, Pancharwala are some of those things. Another one I would categorize in an economic attack is a bulldozer, because what you do is you essentially annihilate the home, yeah, of the entire uh, yeah, some of the cultural words that I used are biryani in Shaheen Bagh. Jhatka is used as a counter against halal, and katwa is an everyday slur. Katwa means a person who has had circumcision. That is a slur that I have heard all my school life. That is a slur I have heard on social media, and that is the word which is now referred to at social media for K2A. Why do they write K2A and other things like that? Because they want to evade the reporting mechanisms in yeah. There's several other in education. There is madrasa chhap, somebody who has studied from madrasa. That is a word that is very commonly used in healthcare. When the Tablighi Jamaat incident had happened, India perhaps was the only country that communally divided the corona patients while it's reporting. They reported Tablighi Jamaat patients separately and they reported other patients separately. Patriotism questions like Pakistani. Then there is another phrase which is often used on social media, PKMKB, Pakistan ki maa ka bhosla. These are not my words. These are the phrases that are being used by Hindutva ideologues. Then phrases of patriotism or belonging, ghar wapsi, homecoming, that you are a convert, you have to come back to Hinduism. And Sharia is again a threat word which is used as if what if the show the probability of how this um, how evil a Muslim dominated rule could be. Even there are also personal specific words used, like Zubair, Muhammad Zubair, a leading fact checker. By the way, I missed out on the Alishan Jafri and Neil Madhav report in the previous slide. You should read that if you do. Very good report on how TV and YouTube are interconnected in hate speech. And Zubair, for example, one of the leading fact checkers in India and hate speech reporters, he's called Lode ka fact checker, the fact checker of Dick is what it means. And Loda is represented in a heart. Then a lot of women who speak out, Arfa and Rana, they are called Begum in a very pejorative way, in a rather, like I said, yeah. So the nature of this vocabulary is essentially, like I explained, all the words is they what they try to do is that they use words. Even like I said, Begum, Abba Jan was mocked. Abba Jan was mocked by the CM of this country, one of the CMs of this country, and it's a term of endearment which has been mocked. So the nature of the vocabulary is essentially mocking, criminalizing, and hypersexualizing everything that they know and they understand. And what has changed is now, earlier when there was an indirect speech, now what has happened is that there's an escalation of this vocabulary. Now this vocabulary can step up. A lot of influencers, a lot of Hindutva voices are actually trying to step up and escalate their hatred so as to compete in this hate market. And even somebody a Hindutva voice who can moderate, for example, if Narendra Modi wishes Eid, then there are tens of people who are going to call him Maulana Modi or Mullah Modi. Even that is not acceptable. So, and then I come down to another nature of this, which is erasure of words. There's a erasure of words which is happening, which is, for example, one of the biggest attacks is on the Arabic script and the Nastaliq script, which was earlier put in India across signboards. They don't want that anymore. Allahabad being changed to Prayagraj, or Aurangabad being changed to Chhatrapati Sambhaji Nagar might just be a name of cities and perhaps a matter of ridicule for a lot of people. But it is also, one has to understand the impact of language. One has to understand the impact of memory that it has by erasing a historical presence of Muslims in any city. And there are also words like Eid. Eid and all are now not celebratable alone. There has to be Akshay Tritiya or a Parshuram Jayanti. So you are essentially erasing a festival or diluting the effect of that particular word in everyday usage. You have to say Eid and then suddenly you have to go to Tritiya, Akshay Tritiya and Parshuram Jayanti. Taj Mahal monuments is called Tejo Mahalay by many people. This is again, so essentially what is happening, I mean, people can mock that the festivals and the monuments are being changed and cities' names are being changed. But what is essentially happening is that the script is being demonized. What is happening is that the Indian language in general is being converted into the Hindu language, and any trace of Muslimness in it has to be erased. It has to be eliminated. It has to be subdued, is what is largely happening. Now, then there's the invention of words. Most of the invention of words that happen is largely due to conspiracy theories. Something like a love jihad did not exist 15 years back. It's an invented word. Land jihad, UPSC jihad, again, something related to education, like I said earlier. UPSC jihad, every person entering into UPSC is called thuk jihad, that if people spit into others' foods, Muslims spit into the food. Largely, again, I'll please take 5 minutes here. I'll take 5 minutes here. And what is the impact of these words generally? The impact, obviously, the obvious impact of this word, actually, slide in here. Anyway, I'll speak. The direct impact of this word is actually violence. This is the direct impact of this kind of hate speech, whether it is 1984, whether it is 2002, whether it is Babri Masjid demolition. The direct impact of the speeches is always violence. In fact, in the same Hate Lab report, it was there was a 36% direct call to violence in all the 668 speeches. When the analysis of all the speeches was made, in 36% of them, there was a direct call of violence. And again, this vocabulary is not prevailing out of. There was an audio clip that I had to show. I would probably show it after a while. I would try to finish what I have to say. The another impact of this is the impact on children. And I will probably, yeah. So the children are being given a vocabulary with a which is completely Hindu in nature, which has erasure of Babri or erasure of many Mughal history in their textbooks. There are friends of mine, like I said, there are friends of mine whose children get abused in school, and then they have to go to the schools and talk to teachers that, hey, listen, this is not cool. So it's becoming a huge problem, and it is very difficult for people to let their children not be impacted by it, because the moment you get into social media, you create a new profile. You create a new profile when you go back home. You will see that the first people that you would be made to follow are all Hindutva BJP aligned people in social media in India. So that is there, and of course there's a big problem which is of normalization. I'll probably just I might shoot. इसकी गाड़ में घुसता था नहीं नहीं था इसकी गाड़ में घुसता था नहीं नहीं दिमाग से टकरा गया था इसलिए तो देख रहे हैं ना मेंटली सिक हो रखा है मादरचोद बात तुम्हारे यहाँ लुल्ली क्यों काटते थे पहले मुझे ये बता तो तुम्हारे यहाँ लुल्ली काटने का रिवाज क्यों है So there's a Twitter Spaces that I had recorded, youngsters talking to one of the youngsters. There's a guy Hamza, and the guy is asking, "तुम्हारे वहाँ लुल्ली काटने का रिवाज क्यों है? कि why do you have this tradition of cutting off dicks, circumcision?" ठीक है अच्छा मैं अभी बताता हूँ मैं डॉक्टर हूँ सुनो सब लोग ध्यान से सुनो अरे डॉक्टर मेरा अच्छा सब लोग ध्यान से सुनो सर्कमसाइज करता हूँ कि सब लोग सर्कमसाइज करवाने आते हो क्योंकि तुम्हारी सेक्स लाइफ जीने पाओगे जब तक तुम लोग चीजें नहीं बताया और I can't get to the recording. I have paucity of time, but there is a phrase that he uses कि तुम्हारी गांड में बाबरी फोड़ेंगे. Again, I will not apologize for the language because this is not my language. This has been spoken by somebody, and I'm merely reiterating it. He says that in your ass, I will explode the Babri Masjid. So yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. That there's a huge impact. These are teenagers, by the way, and the reason why I'm particularly narrating this audio clip is because uh, this is precisely the kind of abuse that I had faced when I was in school. This is precisely the language that some of my classmates used to use on me while bullying and while targeting me. And I was shocked that nothing has changed. Nothing has changed. The acceptance of the society to this vocabulary has not changed in the last 2 decades. This is exactly how people absorb it. This is exactly how they emulate it. And this is exactly how they reproduce it. Again, one of the impacts is that uh, one of the impacts is that sorry, these words end up becoming laws. Love jihad, land jihad are now laws. And we can't respond as Muslims, we can't respond in the same way, because if I respond in the same way, the language that they're using, I will be tone policed. I will be tone policed, and I'm always supposed to speak in a proper formal language and be the good Muslim that I'm supposed to be. Anyway, I'll probably just take 5 minutes more in concluding my. I would not take more than 5 minutes, please. I will take 5 minutes. Just okay. I'll take three. So yeah, how to finish this in three? I will finish this in three. So, like I said, language is a reflection of the society. So the first thing that I would perhaps suggest is that the society should begin with self-reflection in the first place. Majority society. There has to be a very this has now become very deep rooted and ingrained, and the society has to have a forceful introspection to erase. There will have to be a cultural uh, model and a drive to make this vocabulary not be incentivized again and make it a taboo again. uh, what perhaps people in the West can do is that they are not, I mean, one has to understand the role of the West over here as well, that they are not bystanders to this. They're almost collaborators in the dissemination of this vocabulary, if not creation. Meta, which is operating Instagram and Facebook, has there is a discourse monopoly of Hindutva ideologues and BJP on Facebook, WhatsApp, and Instagram. Twitter has just had community notes a couple of days back, which means we'd never had it in the first place in India. Then ANI is supported by ANI is supported by Reuters. News 18, which is again a TV channel, which is supported by CNN. They have to dissociate, and uh, eventually, yeah, I mean, the West needs to take a moral stand. They can't keep looking at 1,400 million population for a market. And lastly, yeah, a lot of journalists have reported hate speech. Alishan, Neil, Zubair, Rakib, Mir, Shaheen, several Fatima. Apologies for forgetting names. But I think a lot of Muslim journalists have come up, and along with many Hindu journalists as well, Parth Kunal being here. I think the signal is very clear that we are not willing to be dehumanized. We are not taking the humiliation. Yes, we are triggered and we are hurt by this vocabulary, but we refuse to be feel humiliated by this vocabulary, and we will not dehumanize ourselves just because these words are. Thank you so much.